Okay, let's unpack this. Can you genuinely turn, like, a list of business contacts, people you actually know, into a multi-billion-dollar empire?
It sounds kind of unbelievable, doesn't it?
Yeah, because for most of us, networking, while it sounds a bit like those awkward conversations over, lukewarm coffee.
Right. Forced small talk sometimes.
But for one individual, Reid Hoffman, the answer is this resounding, almost crazy yes. He did exactly that. Sold LinkedIn for what, $26.2 billion?
An incredible figure. And here's the kicker, as you say.
Mm-hmm.
The sources are really clear on this. This wasn't just some stroke of luck or being in the right place at the right time.
No.
It was deliberate, deeply ingrained, the application of what he actually calls the network mindset.
It's a pretty fascinating story. I mean, as of June 2025, his personal net worth is, what, $2.6 billion?
That's right. Yet, he remains one of the most kind of quietly influential figures in Silicon Valley. Almost understated, wouldn't you say?
Totally. His impact just resonates way beyond the usual flashy headlines. It operates on this deeper, more structural level, We all hear that phrase, who you know matters. And honestly, it often feels like such a cliche.
It does. Something you nod along to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Without really internalizing it. But in this deep dive, we're going to push way beyond that surface stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to try and explore the deeper truths behind Reid Hoffman's network mindset, really peel back the layers, uncover the personal philosophies, the disciplined habits, the pivotal decisions.
That turned a failed startup.
Yeah, a startup that, by all accounts, failed into
Right.
one of the world's most powerful professional platforms.
Right. Our mission here is really to understand how this silent force, as you put it, can fundamentally reshape not just your career path, but your whole approach to building value, creating opportunities, navigating life in this super interconnected world we live in.
So going beyond just what he did.
Exactly. To really grasp why it matters, connecting the dots, revealing the principles that make his story so compelling and honestly so applicable for us today.
Seeing relationships as,
Yeah.
well, as a kind of capital.
A form of capital that compounds. There are ways we don't often stop to think about. The financial mindset. Trust as currency, not just profit.
Okay, so let's start with something genuinely surprising about Hoffman's journey. For a guy who sold LinkedIn for billions, the sources say he never actually aimed to build a company just for the money. Can that really be true?
It's absolutely true. And it's a radical departure from the norm, especially in Silicon Valley, right?
Totally.
His driving force wasn't just revenue or, a quick exit strategy. His ambition was much bigger, more fundamental.
Okay.
What he really wanted to build was a principle, a core belief about how the world should operate, how people should connect and exchange value. It's a crucial distinction. Really sets him apart.
That's wild, because while everyone else was chasing the immediate metric extraction, huge valuations, engineering viral loops.
The usual playbook.
Right. Hoffman was doing something almost entirely different. Quietly. Almost invisibly investing in something far less tangible, but way more powerful.
Which was?
Trust. And not just abstract trust, right? But trust in the very concrete form of meaningful, long-term relationships. It's like he was building a completely different kind of balance sheet.
Exactly. And his famous motto, your network is your net worth. Well, that wasn't just some catchy phrase for him.
No.
It was, quite literally, the core engine behind every single part of his creation. And this deep belief, it wasn't something he just picked up from a business book. It was forged powerfully in the fire of a pretty significant failure, a moment of real clarity that came from a painful experience.
And that failure was SocialNet, right? Launched way back in '97.
That's the one. Imagine a social networking startup years, maybe even a decade ahead of its time.
The vision sounded brilliant on paper, collecting people for dating, roommates, tennis partners, everything.
Right. But as innovative as it seemed, in reality, it just failed. Utterly failed to get traction.
What do you think that was?
Well, it connected people, sure, but it lacked what Hoffman later called gravity. It didn't create real-world value, didn't open up tangible opportunities, didn't really change lives in a meaningful way.
So it was just noise.
In his own words, yeah. Noise, not impact. And that realization, that was his turning point. He understood that a network without real, tangible utility for its users, it's just empty infrastructure.
Wow. That's an incredibly precise lesson to learn from a flop.
Isn't it? So he made this pivotal shift, not just a minor tweak to the plan.
No, it sounds like a radical overhaul of his whole financial mindset.
Exactly. Instead of asking the typical question, how do I monetize these users? He flipped it completely. He started asking, how do I build something that makes each user more valuable to others?
Think about that. That's a completely different paradigm.
It is. And that transformation from a mindset focused on extraction of value from users to one centered on activation and amplification of value for users that became the absolute bedrock of LinkedIn when he started building it in 2002.
So from day one, it wasn't about just grabbing attention or being a content platform, which was the big trend then.
Nope. It was about enabling visibility, building credibility, creating a digital professional identity that could genuinely work for you, silently, continuously, even when you weren't online.
And that's really what made LinkedIn so different from, say, Friendster or MySpace back then.
Absolutely. It didn't actually sell anything in the traditional sense, did it?
Not really, no.
What it did was reveal the value that was already there, inherent within its users, made it discoverable through simple things like endorsements, connections, introductions.
It unlocked dormant potential almost.
Precisely. Every profile wasn't just a digital resume. It was, like you said, a living map of trust. And Hoffman firmly believed trust was a form of currency way more resilient, more enduring than just money.
So in his view, getting a job opportunity, for example, it wasn't just about your qualifications.
Not solely, no. It was, in fact, the end product of accumulated social proof. The result of someone knowing you, someone vouching for you, someone opening a door. It's a very different way to look at professional advancement.
And this is where his thinking really diverged from the typical Silicon Valley founder, right? Most were playing checkers, optimizing for the next transaction, the immediate revenue.
Right, short-term thinking.
But Hoffman, he was playing chess, thinking in terms of these interconnected ecosystems.
Yes. He wasn't optimizing for profit in the moment. He was optimizing for what he called compound connection.
Explain that a bit more, compound connection.
It's like the exponential growth of value that happens when relationships strengthen over time. It builds on itself. He wasn't just connecting dots. He was making those dots grow stronger exponentially over time.
That's a huge difference in strategy.
It really is. And the irony here is pretty striking, isn't it?
How so?
This deeply human, almost non-financial mindset. It ultimately led to one of the biggest all-cash acquisitions in tech history. June 2016, Microsoft buys LinkedIn for $26.2 billion.
Wow.
But what Microsoft really bought wasn't just a company with a massive user base. They bought the intricate trust architecture he'd been meticulously building for 14 years.
So just to sum this part up, for Reid Hoffman, money was never the main goal.
Never the primary objective, it was the byproduct.
Right. The byproduct of creating something genuinely useful, honest, integrated into how people live and grow professionally.
And he didn't see relationships as leverage, something to exploit.
No, he saw them as responsibility.
Exactly, a profound responsibility. And that fundamentally is why this unique financial mindset didn't just make him a billionaire. It made him, as the source puts it, indispensable, truly indispensable to career strategy and wealth building. The power of who.
Okay, so we've unpacked this really unique financial mindset, this idea of trust as the ultimate currency. But that philosophy, profound as it is, didn't just appear fully formed, did it?
Not at all. It was deeply forged by his early experiences, particularly those initial setbacks.
Right. And those experiences didn't just shape his financial outlook. They fundamentally recalibrated his entire career strategy, his approach to wealth building itself.
It's a fascinating progression from failure to this profound clarity.
So before the billions, before LinkedIn was everywhere, he had that quiet failure with SocialNet in '97.
Yep, as we mentioned, ambitious idea, trying to connect people for shared interests, a real precursor to modern social networks.
But it flopped. Users didn't bite, traction never happened. The idea, though visionary, was just too abstract, too early.
Too untethered to real need, as he put it.
And instead of getting bitter or just walking away, he extracted this incredible precision from that failure. It really sharpened his thinking.
Massively.
Right.
He realized people don't just want to connect in theory. They want to solve specific real problems. And from that, he got this powerful insight. Relationships without purpose are weak currency.
Weak currency, meaning they don't generate real value, don't move the needle.
Exactly. Yeah. And what he did next is super instructive for anyone thinking about their career. After SocialNet collapsed, he didn't immediately jump into another founder role.
Which many entrepreneurs would do, right? Try again immediately.
Right. Instead, he made a strategic step back. He joined PayPal.
But not as CEO or anything flashy.
No, as a pragmatic operator. His goal was singular. Learn how real, scrappy companies scale under intense pressure. He wanted a masterclass in execution.
And that turned out to be invaluable. At PayPal, he became part of the now famous PayPal Mafia.
Which is just incredible when you think about it. That concentration of talent. A truly once-in-a-generation team.
Tesla, YouTube, Yelp, Palantir, they all came out of that group.
It wasn't a coincidence. It was about the culture forged there. PayPal wasn't just a startup. It was this high-pressure cooker. Risk takers, deep thinkers, relentless doers, all forged in the chaos of trying to revolutionize online payments.
And in that chaos, Hoffman gained this priceless insight.
Yeah, the right people matter more than the right idea. Think about that. You can pivot ideas. You can't pivot integrity.
Wow. That's a profound statement. And probably a tough lesson to learn in the startup world.
Definitely. It means PayPal taught him the true mechanics of wealth building. Not just personal fortune, but scalable societal value.
How so?
He saw that great companies aren't built from just a brilliant idea in isolation. They're built from who? Every strategic move, every critical decision boiled down to who you trust, who you call for help, and maybe most importantly, who shows up when everything's falling apart.
And this wasn't just theory for him. He saw it happen.
Absolutely. He watched figures like Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Max Levchin make incredibly tough, sometimes brutal decisions in real time. He saw teams survive not just because of individual genius, but because of cohesion, shared purpose, deep trust.
So when PayPal eventually sold to eBay in 2002, Hoffman had the money, sure, but he also had this crystal clear clarity.
Exactly. Capital and clarity. And this time, his approach was fundamentally different. He didn't start by building a product.
He built a team first. Started with the people.
That's a critical inversion, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of the usual startup playbook. The first 10 hires at LinkedIn weren't picked for the flashiest resumes.
No.
They were people he'd worked with for years. People he'd shared stress with, navigated tight deadlines with, even experienced losses with. People who understood speed, understood trust, and crucially, people who knew how to think with him, not just work for him.
That's how real wealth is built then.
He believed so. Not just by launching a company, but by launching with a core group who genuinely multiply each other's strengths, who act as a unified force from day one.
It's clear he never saw wealth as a solo game. He wasn't trying to be at the top of some pyramid.
Never. He consistently saw himself as a node in a web, a contributor to something much bigger, more interconnected than just himself. It's a very humble perspective, but incredibly powerful.
Which explains why, even after LinkedIn's huge success, he didn't just retreat, he kept engaging, became a prolific angel investor, advisor, connector.
Right. And his motivation wasn't primarily just chasing equity. It was chasing impact. His bets were visionary. Airbnb, Facebook, Dropbox, later OpenAI.
He wasn't just picking winners in existing markets.
No, he was picking founders who had this unique ability to attract networks around them. He understood that great founders don't just build companies, they build gravity, this powerful pull that attracts talent, capital, more connections. He invests in people who can build ecosystems.
So his career wasn't this linear climb up a ladder.
Not at all. It was a dynamic series of strategic leaps, each one guided by trust, grounded in people.
From the SocialNet failure to the PayPal pressure cooker, building LinkedIn, then his investing and advising.
Yeah.
He consistently played the long game.
A game most people miss, right? Always looking for the next quick win. He fundamentally got that the goal isn't just immediate money.
It's building for momentum, reputation.
Exactly. Sustained momentum, unassailable reputation, and the kind of true wealth you can't measure in dollars. It's measured by whose calls you return.
And maybe more importantly,
who still picks up when you call. That's the real currency in his world. And it accumulates silently, powerfully over decades. 3. Success habits and unique behaviors. Relentless curiosity and manufactured serendipity.
Okay, let's dig into his success habits then, his unique behaviors. Because Reid Hoffman really doesn't fit that typical Silicon Valley power broker image, does he?
Not at all. He's soft-spoken, very reflective. Honestly, often underestimated from the outside.
So what makes him tick? Where does that success come from?
Well, beneath that calm, almost unassuming exterior, he's genuinely one of the most rigorous thinkers and deliberate habit builders out there. His massive success didn't come from flashy charisma or just raw speed.
No.
It came from something deeper. Relentless curiosity, disciplined connection, and one almost invisible habit. He simply never stopped learning from people.
That's interesting because unlike a lot of high-powered founders who maybe step back after a big exit,
Right, they retreat or go quiet.
Hoffman does the opposite. He leans in day after day, conversation after conversation.
He literally blocks out time, not just for standard meetings, but for something he calls network deepening.
Network deepening, what exactly is that?
It's not transactional catch-ups, not at all.
Yeah.
They're intentional check-ins.
Yeah.
He connects with founders, investors, researchers across all sorts of fields.
And what happens in these check-ins?
He asks unusual questions, often quite philosophical. He connects dots others just don't see. And crucially, he listens, really listens, not to reply, but to genuinely understand how others think.
So he's accumulating insight.
At an astonishing scale. His real edge isn't just IQ or capital, it's his unparalleled access to other people's best thinking, meticulously cultivated over years.
And this habit, this relentless engagement with ideas through people, that was the quiet engine behind LinkedIn, wasn't it?
Absolutely. He didn't just build the platform to help others connect. He built it because he personally believed that every single person, if you ask them the right question at the right time, has the potential to unlock a breakthrough.
And that belief turned into a real personal practice for him.
Definitely. Every single week, he dedicates hours just connecting people who might not know each other, founders with talent, scientists with technologists, activists with investors.
And he does this without expecting anything back immediately.
Zero expectation of immediate return. He calls it playing long-term positive-sum games. And, true to his philosophy, those games consistently pay off in unexpected, valuable ways down the line. It's a quiet, ongoing investment in the future. Very few people practice that with such discipline.
This also explains his podcast, Masters of Scale, right? It wasn't just a media play.
Not at all. The sources make it clear. For Hoffman, it's a deeply personal learning system. Every guest is someone he genuinely wants to learn from. Every episode is a structured inquiry into how scalable thinking actually works in the real world.
And because he's genuinely curious, not just performing?
Exactly. The conversations naturally go deeper than your typical business podcast. They're not promotional, they're philosophical.
Asking things like,
what does it really take to build something enduring? What mistakes shape the best leaders? Where does resilience actually come from when things get tough? He's less interested in the how-to and much more in the why.
And underlying all this is a fierce internal discipline, too. He reads constantly.
Voraciously. And across incredibly diverse domains, history, ethics, psychology, tech, he's not scanning headlines. He's seeking frameworks, mental models, underlying structures to understand the world, almost like a scholar.
And he connects what he reads with what he hears in conversations.
Meticulously, he integrates it all. This quiet, often invisible system lets him build what he calls compound insight. It's this layered intuition that gives him an uncanny ability to advise founders, often better than seasoned VCs. He's building this constantly evolving knowledge base in his head.
Maybe his most unique habit, the one that really crystallizes his approach, is this idea that he doesn't chase serendipity. He actively manufactures it. What does that even mean?
That's a critical distinction, isn't it?
Yeah.
He operates from this deep understanding that luck favors proximity. So he deliberately stays close to innovative thinkers, ambitious builders, moments of inflection when new ideas are emerging. He firmly believes opportunity will find you if you stay connected to genuine energy and intelligence.
But there's a catch.
There's a prerequisite. You have to show up, consistently give before you ask, and consciously build relationship equity long before you ever think you might need to spend it. It's active, not passive. You create the conditions for luck.
So that's the real success habit then. It's not just the calendar or the reading list.
No, it's the deep-seated mindset, believing people are the greatest source of innovation. And that real, lasting success comes not from speed, but from patiently, consistently staying in the conversation long enough to actually change its direction. 4. Life philosophy and decision-making. Business as applied philosophy. All right, let's transition into his core life philosophy, his decision-making process. It's clear Reid Hoffman doesn't make decisions quickly or superficially.
No, he makes them deeply. It's a completely different rhythm, isn't it, compared to many of his peers?
Absolutely. At the root of almost every major move, leaving academia, joining PayPal, launching LinkedIn, those big early investments like OpenAI, there's this deep, deliberate process.
And it's not driven primarily by spreadsheets or ego.
No, it's driven by something far more fundamental, older even, philosophy.
And we mean that literally, right? He studied philosophy at Oxford, almost became a professor.
He did. But he realized the big questions driving him about trust, Systems, ethics, humanity. They weren't meant just for lectures or papers. They needed testing, applying in the real world.
So business became his lab.
Exactly. For Hoffman, business became a vast, dynamic stage to apply philosophy at scale. It's an incredibly unique way for an entrepreneur to see the world.
And this philosophical grounding is what really sets him apart when making decisions.
I think so. He doesn't just ask, what's the financial upside? His questions go way deeper. He asks, what's the system behind this? What core principles does it reinforce? And crucially, if everyone acted this way, what kind of world would that create?
It's almost like a Socratic approach to business deals.
It really is. A lens borrowed straight from moral philosophy. And it influences everything: who he hires, where he invests. When he evaluates founders, he's not just looking at the product vision.
What else is he looking for?
He observes how they handle trade-offs, how they navigate ambiguity, whether their decisions come from deep alignment or from fear. He's looking for character, deep character, not just charisma.
And while many investors instinctively run from risk,
Hoffman leans into what he calls intelligent uncertainty.
intelligent uncertainty.
His rule is pretty clear. If something is both high potential and non-consensus, then you should lean in harder. He's not chasing the crowd, not
No.
seeking consensus.
He's chasing asymmetry.
Deliberately. Those opportunities where the potential upside is just massively larger than the perceived risk, usually because others haven't seen it yet or understood the long-term implications.
Like backing Airbnb early on, when people thought it was crazy.
Exactly. When the idea of strangers sleeping in your home was met with, well, laughter and skepticism, or supporting OpenAI way back when AI safety was still a pretty niche, almost fringe concern, long before it hit the mainstream.
So how does he see further? Is it some kind of sixth sense?
I don't think it's mystical.
Yeah.
It's his ability to see through a system's incentives, and more importantly, to predict what that system will look like once it hits massive scale. He sees the future architecture, the potential shifts.
What's really striking is how his personal life seems to mirror this decision-making style.
It does. Hoffman often talks about the moral weight of opportunity, this profound responsibility that comes with having access to networks, capital, information. For him, these aren't just tools to win.
They're tools to uplift.
To uplift others, to contribute positively. He sees individual decisions not as isolated bets, but as powerful signals. Every move sends a message. Every partnership shapes culture. So he moves slowly, always with immense intent. His calendar might look packed, but his inner compass is never rushed. He lets decisions ripen, ensuring they align with his deepest values. Philosophical patience.
And this extends to his conversations, too. He's not trying to win arguments.
No, his goal is to map them. He listens intently for blind spots in others and potentially in his own thinking. He helps people think in terms of entire trees, the whole system, not just isolated branches or immediate details. It's about collective sense-making, getting a clearer picture together.
Which is why founders keep coming back to him, not just for practical advice, but for clarity.
Exactly. He has this unique knack for helping them zoom out, to see how a seemingly small decision today profoundly shapes their identity, their company's identity, way down the road. He brings that long-term perspective to immediate challenges.
So at the core of all this is this belief that business is fundamentally
One of the most powerful forms of philosophy in action. That's how he sees it. Every company expresses a worldview. Every product changes behavior, even subtly. Every decision builds or erodes trust.
And those who ignore that truth?
They might win short-term battles,
Yeah.
achieve fleeting success, but they'll never build something truly worthy of the long game. Reid Hoffman, he plays that long game, unequivocally.
Not with speed or flash.
With deep intention, philosophical patience. And that's why his decisions, though rarely loud, has such an enduring impact. Building legacy, not just wealth. V-power thinking and social influence. The architect of innovation infrastructure.
Okay, so let's shift to his power thinking and social influence, because it's fascinating. Reid Hoffman isn't a loud guy, right? He's not banging the drum. Yet his thinking consistently echoes. How does that actually work?
That's a great question, because it really defies the common idea of power, doesn't it? He's not usually the one on stage commanding the spotlight.
No.
He's more often the one in the second row, maybe asking that one single incisive question.
That changes everything.
That changes the whole direction of the conversation, shifts the collective thinking in the room. His influence isn't performative, it's structural. It's about how the room thinks after he leaves, not just capturing attention in the moment. He influences the underlying framework.
That makes a lot of sense. So his real power isn't just titles or net worth. It's how he deliberately architected himself into the infrastructure of innovation.
Exactly. He's fundamentally a systems thinker. While others are busy pitching, persuading, positioning, Hoffman is quietly observing the intricate network underneath it all.
Seeing how value flows, where trust stalls.
Precisely. And critically, where nascent ideas have the potential to blossom into real institutions. And then he moves, not with brute force, but with remarkable precision, strategic insight, thinking multiple moves ahead, like a grandmaster of the innovation ecosystem.
Which is why he doesn't just fund single companies, he funds entire ecosystems.
Right, think about it. Airbnb wasn't just a bet on a travel company. It was a huge wager on scaling trust between strangers, a massive societal shift.
Facebook wasn't just social media.
It was a bet on identity at scale. OpenAI wasn't just AI. It was a long-term wager on aligning human and machine intelligence. These are foundational bets on how the future might work.
So every investment is like a vote for a future architecture.
That's a great way to put it. A deliberate network shift in how people will live, work, relate. He's always asking that key question. If this succeeds, what becomes true for the world? That systemic thinking guides where he puts his capital and attention, always looking at the ripple effects.
But his influence goes way beyond just money, right? He's this insider supernode.
That's what they call him, someone with extraordinary access to power, to key decision makers. But critically, he redistributes that power. With intent, he's a connector, but with real purpose.
So founders come to him not just for cash.
No, they seek his insight, his invaluable introductions, his clarity. Hoffman doesn't hoard social capital, he actively circulates it. He has this uncanny ability to connect the right people at the right time, often behind the scenes, often without seeking any credit.
He's amplifying possibility.
Exactly. It's not just doing favors, it's a deeply held philosophy, a commitment to fostering a more connected, collaborative ecosystem.
And his podcast, Masters of Scale, it really reflects that thinking.
It's a mirror of it, absolutely. He doesn't just lecture at guests, he collaboratively builds with them. Each conversation becomes this public artifact of strategic thought, exploring how to grow responsibly, survive chaos, lead effectively when the old playbook breaks down.
It's like listening in on a masterclass.
For many listeners, yeah, it's mentorship by osmosis. His voice is calm, measured, but the questions are sharp, penetrating. He doesn't care about superficial wins.
He wants to know how leaders decided, what they feared, what they learned too late.
Precisely. In a tech world often obsessed with hyper-growth metrics, he consistently steers the conversation back to human depth, the internal struggles of leadership, seeking wisdom beyond the headlines.
Maybe his most radical contribution, though, is how he constantly challenges that lone genius myth in Silicon Valley.
He really does. He constantly redirects credit, points to the team, the collaborators, the culture, always highlighting the collective effort.
Why does he do that so consistently?
Because he knows, deep down, that no success truly scales or endures without shared values. Collective effort. That's why even at the peak of his influence, he remains profoundly collaborative, co-authoring, co-investing, co-designing.
His ego isn't tied to being the smartest guy in the room.
No. His ego was invested in building better rooms, creating spaces and relationships that foster true collaboration, collective intelligence.
So Reid Hoffman doesn't dominate a room, he rewires it.
That's it. Slowly, intelligently, with philosophical patience and strategic instinct. And that's why his influence lasts.
Because when he believes in you.
He doesn't just back your idea. He helps you think on that higher level where ideas become networks, and networks become real, lasting change. Winning Farwell, crisis strategy and long-term game, networked resilience.
Okay, finally, let's get into his crisis strategy. And this idea of the long-term game, something he often calls networked resilience. It seems clear Reid Hoffman doesn't waste a crisis.
No, he definitely doesn't. He leverages it for clarity, he watches, studies, and then he moves.
We saw this during COVID, right?
Absolutely. When COVID hit in 2020, while many founders and businesses were freezing up facing collapse, Hoffman leaned in.
Not just with money.
No, with incredible clarity. Sharing his thinking in real-time podcasts, essays, quiet advisory calls, and his message wasn't reactionary. It was deeply architectural.
What was the core message?
Don't just optimize for survival. Optimize for resilience. Build systems that don't just endure disruption, but actually learn from it. It was a masterclass in staying calm in the storm.
And this wasn't just theory he cooked up.
Not at all. This was instinct, honed over decades. He'd navigated the dot-com bust, built PayPal in chaos, seen LinkedIn survive multiple crises, financial crashes, tech backlashes, platform shifts.
So he knew from experience.
He knew deep down that in moments of collapse, the winners aren't always the fastest movers. They're the clearest thinkers, the ones who stay calm, maintain clarity when the playbook catches fire. It's about mental fortitude.
Which is why his crisis advice sounds almost deceptively simple.
Right. Call your people. Be transparent. Shorten the feedback loop. Don't just manage risk. Redistribute trust.
He argues that in a storm, your real strategy isn't the product.
No, it's your relationships. Because investors can wait, markets recover. But if your team fractures, if your culture erodes, if partners lose belief, that's when collapse becomes permanent. Those relationships are the absolute bedrock.
And this leads to his idea of networked resilience.
Yeah, the powerful idea that strength isn't individual, it's distributed. The companies that survive and thrive have deep reservoirs of trust. Loyal teams, engaged advisors, customers who are believers, not just users. It's like a built-in immune system.
But you can't just build that overnight when a crisis hits.
Impossible. It's meticulously constructed long before. Through habits, values, and the quiet decision to treat people as legacy, not leverage. It's a proactive, deeply human investment made over years.
That's why, even in chaos, he urges founders to zoom out, to play the infinite game.
Right. That's a direct reference to James Carson's philosophy.
Yeah.
The difference between finite games, played to win, and infinite games, played to keep playing. Hoffman always plays the second. It's about enduring, not just winning one battle.
So he's always asking not just what works now,
but what will still work when the rules change, when the economy shifts, when AI transforms everything. He's searching for those timeless principles, the underlying truths that persist through upheaval.
And that's how he invests, builds, thinks about reputation.
Exactly. Reputation for him isn't fleeting. It's a long-term currency that gains compound interest only through consistent integrity, day after day, year after year.
He's not chasing the news cycle.
No, he's building quietly, deliberately underneath it. While others sprint for headlines, he walks steadily toward the next decade.
Which is why, when crisis hits, people don't just quote him.
They call him. Because he's not just resilient himself. He makes others resilient too. He's that beacon in the storm.
So in the end, that's his ultimate long game. It's not just wealth or fame.
No. It's about cultivating relationships that endure, building trust that outlives turmoil, architecting systems that keep people connected deeply, meaningfully, even when the world feels like it's falling apart. Outro. So, yeah, to kind of wrap up what we've unpacked today, Reid Hoffman didn't just build a company. He meticulously built a worldview, one quiet connection at a time.
In a world absolutely obsessed with scale at all costs, he consistently chose depth. In an era chasing speed, he chose the clarity that comes from, thoughtful deliberation.
Right, and in a culture rewarding visibility, performative presence, he quietly built enduring power through trust, fundamental trust.
His success wasn't loud or flashy. It was layered, accumulated year after year. By showing up for others, asking better questions, placing those long, often non-consensus bets on people, not just products.
And the deeper lesson here isn't just, oh, networks matter. Everyone kind of gets that.
Yeah.
Hoffman goes way deeper.
Yeah.
He shows us through his whole career, his philosophy, that relationships aren't just a means to success. They are success itself.
And trust isn't some soft value.
Not at all. It's the most durable, resilient, compounding form of capital you can possibly build.
And that, in the long game of life and business, the only leverage that really compounds forever is that belief someone else has in you, especially when the room goes quiet, when the pressure's on.
Exactly. You can choose to chase the spotlight, clamor for attention, or you can choose to quietly, deliberately, philosophically build the system that the spotlight eventually turns to.
Reid Hoffman definitely chose that second path.
He absolutely did. And because of it, maybe we as listeners, as learners, we see the world and maybe each other just a little more clearly.
So if this deep dive stirred something in you, an idea, a memory, a realization about your own connections, don't just let that feeling fade away,
Yeah, act on it.
Maybe share this deep dive with someone who really embodies that spirit, building trust, connecting people without needing credit. That friend who's always connecting people behind the scenes.
Or just take a moment. Reflect on a relationship in your own life that genuinely changed everything for you. How it's Gravity, as Hoffman might say, shaped your path.
And if you're out there building your own network, not for clout, not for status, but for real, deeper impact.
We just encourage you to keep engaging with these ideas, listening better, thinking longer, showing up with intent.
Because at the end of the day, as Reid Hoffman reminds us, your greatest asset might not be what you own.
It might be who still picks up the phone when you call.